Are we about to enter a week that we will remember as the beginning of the end of the war on drugs? I think in some ways that's the question. And I think it's worthwhile going back to the genesis, the creation myth of the war on drugs. Much of it really started by Richard Nixon as part of a kind of culture war politics toolbox. We've got some great tape of Richard Nixon talking about the issue from the Nixon tapes, which, can I just say about the Nixon tapes, you think you know the best parts, but there's just always better stuff in there. This is Nixon in 1971 talking to Bob Haldeman about marijuana. Take a listen.
Now, this is what I want a strong statement on marijuana. Can I get it out of the domestic council? Sure. I mean, one on marijuana that just tears the I see another thing in the news this morning, but by God, we are going to get the marijuana thing. And I want to get it right square in the puss. I want to find a way to put more on that, or somebody else would do that. Yep. I want to get it against legalizing all that sort of thing.
So I want to hit it square in the puss. I want to hit against legalizing all that sort of thing. We've edited out the part in which he speculates in an anti-Semitic fashion about the relationship between Jewish lawmakers and support for legalization.
Non-existent as far as I can tell.
We've edited that out. But that's the place where this is coming from. And I think some of the skepticism against the war on drugs is born of the fact that it was sold in this incredibly cynical way.
You're right. There's a lot of cultural baggage with this, and so obviously mistakes have been made in the past.
That's a Nixon phrase.
You know, it's true. It's on purpose. Actually, but instead of figuring out all this cultural stuff, let's just look at today. Let's look at the health. Let's look at the data, and not make. I know a lot of people have baggage from Vietnam and anti-Nixon, pro-Nixon, pro-marijuana, hippie, this and that. It's a lot of baggage that people come with, but I think it's time. I think Americans have grown up. Let's have a real conversation about this.
So the real conversation is now, right? So one of the big things is consumption going to increase? I mean, are we going to see more people smoking marijuana in these states?
Okay, so first of all, the United States already smokes 3 times the amount of marijuana that the rest of the world does.
Is that true?
It's true. Wait, the rate of
in total or per capita?
No, per capita. The percentage of Americans who smoke marijuana, 3 times the global average. Yeah, 3 times the global average.
Why do we smoke so much weed?
We do a lot of things at 3 times the global average.
But can we just say one thing on that point, which is Black and Latinos do not smoke at the same rate as whites. So there are also racial differences in consumption.
What you were going to say about that?
Oh, well, so, I mean, the floodgates, I believe, will open when legalization is here in these states, and then as it expands, you're going to see at least a doubling and likely more. I mean, that's not only my opinion. I mean, that's the opinion based on, economists believe the same thing to be true. How could it not be true? I mean, when I ask myself, would I smoke marijuana if it were available at the corner store? Yeah. If I were having a party and it was available, I could pick it up? Yes, I would buy it. And that decision will be replicated out millions of times around the country.
It's advertising, access, and availability. Again, it doesn't mean that there aren't things that we can do about current policy to make it better, to improve the health issue. We treat cancer like health. We intervene early. Let's do the same with drugs.
Wait, if this consumption increases, I mean, I think this gets to an interesting part of the public opinion around this, which is that one of the arguments I think progressives make about decriminalization or legalization has to do with the way in which the war on drugs is waged, right? And particularly the disparate impact it has, particularly on Black and Latino citizens. But public opinion on legalization in particularly African-American communities, my understanding, is quite different than what it is among whites. In fact, it's lower. And I'm curious, as someone from the NAACP, whether you've seen this up close. Is this something that the organization has been talking about?
Well, I mean, clearly, there's a lot of discussion around the issue, but I think, clearly, there's a separation, right? I mean, you can talk about a war on drugs, but there's different types of wars you can have. And if the war on drugs is mass incarceration, our community has suffered so much from that. I think our community stands very strong about the negative effects of criminalization of the war on drugs and the mass incarceration. But then there's the issue of should you have a war on drugs, which our community is also very much for as a public health issue, as something that is hurting your community, that is tearing apart. So we have incarceration tearing us apart with the official war on drugs, and then we have drugs tearing apart our community. And so you can have a more nuanced conversation about it and be adamant about it. I think that's why you see in public opinion polls, African Americans don't just flock to legalization because we know drugs have a very negative effect as well.
I think that's really important because public opinion is formed by people's experiences. And if your experience is that you're getting slammed by the cop, I mean, my daughter and her friends can't stand out on the street in front of their apartment building because the cops are going to come and harass them, right? Just for standing out in front of their own apartment building. Plus, you have the fact that there are very serious drugs in communities of color that are ravaging not just the health but the fabric of families. So, of course, opinion is going to run on any drug in the black and I think Latino communities as well. On any drug. I mean, but the consumption is much, much lower. The consumption will probably go up. I mean, one of the things that would be very interesting to see is how does consumption change in Colorado, which, Denver does have black folk and it does have Latinos. I've been there, I've seen it. And they've got 4, 5, and up to 13 times the incarceration rates, even when they have lower usage. Right. What happens there? So I think your point of this experiment is it's going to be important to look at race in the experiment.
Hold both those thoughts. Quick break. We're going to come back.